You're listening to the Born to Kick Arse podcast with Matt Tomasi and can be found at borntokickarse.com/episode 53.
Welcome to the Born to Kick Arse podcast, where you're introduced to the most fascinating people on the planet. Learn the ingredients of greatness that you can apply to your life. And now your host, Matthew Tomasi.
Catra Corbett used to be a crystal meth addict until she was arrested for dealing. After spending a night locked up behind bars, Catra made a decision to change the direction of her life, which included going vegan and giving up drugs and alcohol immediately. Catra has since gone on to conquer over 260 ultramarathons, 120 of which are 100-milers. Catra is a collector of tattoos and piercings and can be spotted a mile away wearing the brightest coloured outfits possible. Every year, Catra celebrates her birthday by running for the same amount of hours as her age and has now been clean and sober for over 17 years. Enjoy the interview. Catra Corbett, welcome to the Born to Kick Arse podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. I'm excited to talk to you.
Did you go for a run today, or did you take Truman out for a run today?
I only took him out for 2 miles. It was pouring rain and it was super windy, and I went out for 15 miles, and it was pretty epic out there. I ran 20 miles yesterday on Mount Diablo, and it was kind of a calm before the storm. It was supposed to be really storming yesterday, but I lucked out and it actually stopped raining once I started my run. And so I stayed out longer than I was going to. And then today the wind was blowing so bad that I couldn't even stand upright. I was on my hands and knees trying to get up this peak, and I decided to kind of turn around.
All right, yeah. Better
to be safe and run another day. Yeah.
Yep.
So on those type of days, I don't take Truman with me because obviously I don't want anything to happen to him. And the wind was blowing and it was pouring rain, and he's really small. He's like 9 pounds and he can get hypothermia really easy. So I don't like to put him in harm's way. So I did take him on the road. So he got a couple miles in for the day.
So just for listeners, Truman's not a kid. Who is Truman?
Truman he's my kid. He's a furry kid. Yep. He is a miniature dachshund. And he weighs 9 pounds and he has 3-inch legs.
All right. And
he is 10 years old, and I adopted him 4 years ago, and he was not a runner at all. And he's turned out to be quite the little guy. He's done a few ultramarathons, and his best 50K time, which was this year, was 6 hours and 59 minutes.
Jeez, that's incredible.
So not too shabby.
Yeah.
And so I always like to use him when people say, oh God, they look at me and they said, I can never run that far. I can never do an ultramarathon. And I say, you know what? I have a little dog and he could do 50K. You could do 50K. So it's all in your mind.
Yeah.
You can train to do whatever you want, but it's you can't ever say, no, you can't. When you see him, you're like, oh shit, I can, I have to now.
Yeah. So how do you monitor his, his fluid intake? Does he, like when he's really sort of struggling, does he just, drop back from a run to just like a walk and he starts to really pant? Is that sort of how you monitor his fluid intake?
I give him water out of my hydration pack. I kind of squirt it in his mouth. Or on longer runs, I bring a small little tiny collapsible bowl. It's like super small and just enough for him to drink out of. But a lot of times he won't drink for the first couple of few hours. So I force kind of drink him by squirting the water into his mouth to make him drink. And so, he's not a big, some dogs are big drinkers and other dogs aren't. And you got to kind of make them drink just to wet their little mouth, so that way they're getting hydration inside of them. And he never really struggles. I mean, I've never had him to a point unless it's been pretty warm, but I don't, I watch what I do with him. So if I know it's going to be super hot one day, I'm going to get up earlier in the morning and get him his run in, and not take him out
Yep.
in 80-degree, 90-degree temperature, although he has done a couple of shorter races in that condition. And I told myself, I won't do that to him again,
Yeah.
not in, even a half marathon in those kind of conditions, just because it's not safe for a dog. They don't sweat like we do, and they sweat through their pads of their feet and through their panting. And so, they get stressed. And since he is a smaller dog, they do say that they can withstand a lot more than a larger dog. So he's better in the heat than a bigger dog. And so he definitely does a lot better in the heat than he does in the cold, because he has gotten hypothermia before. So he's quite amazing.
Yeah. Now, you said you lived Northern California. Are there, just on the trails out there, are there animals that Truman can detect, are there snakes sort of like on the trail, or other sort of animals that, you may not have seen during your runs that Truman can sort of, has he ever sort of notified you, I guess, of any particular animals that you may not have seen during the run?
So and when a coyote is around, he will stop. And so I have his little collar has like two little identifications on there, so they kind of make a little clinging noise. So when I don't hear that, because he runs behind me, he's not the kind of dog that runs ahead of me. So with a snake or anything like that, he's not going to have a problem, because I'm in front of him to see it before he does. And unless he's with somebody else, then if somebody's in front of me, then he'll run in the middle, kind of thing.
Yep.
But yeah, he'll stop. Like there's been many times where he stops and I don't even see anything. So I'm like, oh, there might be a mountain lion, because you're not always going to see the mountain lions. I've seen 12 mountain lions in my running career, and they don't really want anything to do with us. And I belong to the East Bay Regional Parks Volunteer Safety Patrol. So we've had training with the mountain lion experts and stuff like that. And they always say that chances are a mountain lion is never going to approach another animal, like a dog with a human.
Yeah.
So, but I know he senses other things that are around. Like we've seen bobcats together. We see lots of coyotes. I mean, I've had coyotes kind of stalking us when we're running along, and, they'll come in a cup, like 2 or 3 at a time. And that's when I put them on leash and, just pay attention, make sure they're not going to try to come at us.
Yeah.
And we've never had that problem. So he does notify me when there's something up. He'll stop dead in his tracks. I won't hear him, and I turn around and he's just standing there. So I'm like, oh, he hears something.
Yeah.
There has been only one time where he almost ran right into a rattlesnake. I was in front of him and I almost stepped on it, and I jumped out of the way off to the side, and he was coming up right behind me, and it was coiled, and I thought, no, I'm screaming at him, and luckily he didn't even see it, and his vision is not the best right now. He's out of eye surgery, but I mean, he sees stuff, but he didn't clearly see the rattlesnake, and it was rattling. I'm like, how did he not see that? But I was so grateful that he didn't go right into him, because, I'd rather have the rattlesnake bite me than bite him,
Now, you love to run, I believe.
I do.
Yeah.
I am very passionate about being outdoors.
Yep.
It's more just being out, loving nature and, living each day, it's just part of who I am. I just love adventure.
So do you live near, do you live near the coast? Can you see the water?
No, I don't. You can see the water up on the peaks I run from. I live more inner. I mean, there's what's called the Bay area. So the Bay is out there, but it's driving to get to the Bay is probably like 6 miles to 10 miles from here, where there's actual water, but that's not, it's just like part of the bay. It's not the ocean or anything like that. It's just inlets of the water that reaches out to the San Francisco Bay.
Yep.
But I live across the street from the trailhead, so I live less than a half a mile.
Just for listeners, you've got an incredible resume, which we're going to get into. So an ultramarathon is anything more than a normal marathon, like any distance further than a normal marathon. How many ultramarathons have you run to date?
So somewhere around 260, I would believe, maybe a little bit more, because back in the day there wasn't, the ultra sign up where they kept track of everything. So a lot of stuff isn't in the database. And I've run 126 times of running 100 miles or more.
Yeah. So you love the 100-mile distance?
I did until I started doing 200. It's kind of like that. It's more of like a fast packing adventure.
Yeah.
And it's more of a challenge. People think, oh my God, I could never do 200 miles, but you do take sleep breaks. There's sleep stations you can sleep. And so, I've always plan out, it's more of a planning thing. I mean, obviously the really, really fast guys that are winning, they're taking very little naps, if any. You can't pretty much be out past 48 hours. You're going to start really hallucinating if you don't sleep for at least 10 or 15 minutes. But yeah, you plan it out. And, I feel like that's more of my niche. I can start doing really well at that distance. Doing my first official one was at Tahoe 200 last year. And I had run 3 times 200 miles on my own as solos. And, doing it as a race, it was really fun. It was just like, I felt like I was just, out there by myself, fast packing, and I had my plan of like when I was going to sleep. And most people were sleeping before 100 miles and they're like, you haven't slept yet? And I'm like, no, I mean, I'm used to going for 100 miles, so I don't need to sleep. And then I slept like 100 mile, 106, I slept for 3.5 hours.
Yep.
And then I took another 2.5, 3 hour break. So basically in a 200, you're, the one that I ran, the official one, Tahoe 200, you would go pretty much 15 to 20 miles in between aid stations. So you'd be out there like up to like 6 hours, being self-supported.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I said, like fast packing where you're doing your own thing. So you really got to know how to take care of yourself, and you can't go into running a 200 mile not prepared. You've got to be very prepared, and there's required gear you need to carry in those races as well.
With with your approach to getting sleep breaks on a 200 miler, or I guess for people who don't know that, the equivalent or the conversion is about 320 kilometres. Do you sort of try and take a sleep break about halfway? Do you have 1 or 2 sleep breaks? And traditionally, when do you like to sort of have your sleep break normally?
So halfway, yeah. A little. This last race I did was 106 miles, and that was pretty much halfway because the race was 206. So a 200 miler is not necessarily just 200. Yeah. Like the Moab 200 is actually 236 miles.
I round it down.
200. Yeah,
that's cruel.
So for me, since I already do 100-mile races, I'm pretty good for, I can be out there functioning pretty well for 36 hours.
Yeah.
And after that, it's really important because just taking that break, you are totally rejuvenated, and it's like a new day, a new person. It's like you just feel ready to go again. So with the Tahoe 200, so I slept at the 106 mile into it, and then I slept again the next night. So when it was nighttime is when I slept, and then and it was freezing too. So it's hard to get back going once you're freezing your ass off in a tent, but they have it pretty well organized and set up where they have cots or they have the blow up beds, and you kind of just dive in there, put some blankets over you and go to sleep, and you can tell somebody to wake you up in a certain amount of time, and they're right on it. So.
Yeah. I was going to ask that. How do you actually know when to wake up? So there's actually volunteers there.
Well, they'll wake you up. Yeah. So, and my crew, you have a crew and they can meet you at the aid stations. And so, basically you could tell them, but the crew is usually sleeping in a vehicle. So you just, they tell the aid station people, and they're super organized, and they have a separate, the way they have the sleep station set up, they kind of have it pushed further away from where the aid station is, because the aid station is like the party happening spot, and these people that come out to volunteer, they have like a disco going, and just to try to motivate everybody. But they'll put the sleep stations further away so that it's not disturbing the people that are really trying to sleep. So it's just very well organized. I mean, to be a race director for a 200 miler, that's either a point-to-point course or a very large loop. You have to be a very detailed, organized person to do this.
The Tahoe 200, is that a loop around a particular lake? Is that right?
It is it's a big, huge loop in Tahoe. Yeah. So it's up in the mountains, and there's actually a trail that goes around Tahoe called the Tahoe Rim Trail, and it's 170 miles. And I have done that back in the day. I was like with 2 other women. We were the first group of women to do the whole thing in a continuous push, and we did that in 72 hours back in 2001.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So, and this is just added. Yeah, so it's pretty exciting and beautiful, beautiful country out there.
Yeah, the scenery would be incredible, I think, on that one, around the lake.
So the other races she has, so Candace Burt is the race director. Destination Trails is an organization here in the United States, and she was the very first person to put on a mountain like 200 and one continuous loop, because a lot of these that were going on beforehand are shorter loops, 20-mile loops to run 200 miles and going over the same loop again and again. But she brought it one step further by doing these events in these massive, huge wilderness areas and organizing it. So it was a big 200-mile loop up in the mountains in the Sierra Nevadas in California.
That'd be great. If we sort of rewind back to your early days, can you give us or give listeners an overview of, I guess what you were into, I guess in your early 20s, that sort of era of your life? Can you maybe tell us about that?
Yeah, so I was big into what is called the goth scene. Not sure if you're familiar with that. Probably everybody is. And kind of the punk scene. I was long black hair, white skin, totally did not look like who I look like now. In fact, when I post pictures, people are like shocked that that was me. So I was really into the dance scene, party girl, hanging out at the nightclub, that was my scene, was just going out all night, staying awake for hours. I was really into drinking and, started doing drugs and got into doing speed because that just kind of went along with being up all night and, going out for 3 nights in a row with no sleep. And I always tell people I was kind of training to do these 100-milers back then because I was staying awake all night. When I did my first 100, it was not affecting me like it affected most people that are not used to staying awake. Yeah. So I said back then I was training to do my 100s.
Yeah.
But I was definitely a party girl, not like I am now. I was just, as part of the scene that I was into. And, and I started doing speed early on and I didn't become an addict right away, but, shortly from the very first time I did it, like within 6 months, I just started fully doing it every day.
Yeah.
So.
And how old were you at this point?
I was in my 20s. So I didn't, I smoked pot when I was younger and, tried acid and never got really into it. I was more of a drinker, so I would say I had a drinking problem for sure. Cause when I would drink, I would definitely drink to get drunk. It wasn't just like, just to hang out. It was like to get fully on buzz.
Yeah.
And so once I found the speed, then it was like, oh, well, I got this different kind of high and I'm not falling down and drunk. I'm just,
just charging,
acting, crazy, crazier in a different way, but just totally into my dance club scene and being awake all night and going out and having fun like that. So I just kind of switched from drinking all the time to getting heavily into speed and snorting speed every single day, morning, noon, and night.
Yeah. How did you find the come downs? Like, for every day or every night that you stay up, they say that the downside is you've got to have like another day's sleep to compensate for that. How did you sort of find the come downs off speed, staying up for 3 or 4 nights in a row, coming down? How full on was that? Was that something you could easily
I
deal
worked too. I was working full time in a hair salon, so that kind of went on with my whole scene that I was into. It's like, we partied all night and worked. I worked 10 hours a day, no problem. Doing hair, and I was really good at what I did. So, just like on the weekends, like every other week, it was like you came down and you slept all day, and then you just did it again and got up the next day, and the most I ever stayed up. I mean, I hear horror stories of people, how many days they could stay up on end. My body was shut down by the third day. I would just have to sleep. Yeah, I couldn't function.
Yeah. And how long were you in that scene for?
Oh, well, I was in that scene for a very long time, but the drug part of it, luckily, I was not doing that for years and years, and where obviously, it didn't age me and all of that. So I was only doing it for about 3.5 years, almost 4 years, like heavily into it.
Yeah.
So I just feel very fortunate that I got arrested and scared straight and got out of it, because I know so many people that it took a lot more than that, and just years of them putting their body through abuse. And I see these people years and years later, and I'm just like, wow, they look much older than me. I mean, I'm 52 and I don't feel like I look that old. And I'm just very, very fortunate that I completely switched gears and got really, really healthy. And so that helped me, I think, for me to look good.
Yeah. Tell us about the time you got arrested. How did that happen? Were you, what actually unfolded on that day or night that you got arrested?
So I did a drug sell over the phone. Me and my ex-boyfriend at the time, Jason, we were selling speed. And we were just, we weren't big time dealers. We were selling to our friends just so we could keep our habit, supplied for free, basically. So a friend of ours who actually didn't buy it from us, but he got arrested, and he didn't want to turn in big wig dealer, because that would be more consequences if he turned in the big guys. And so he said that he got it from us. So the cops made him do a buy over the phone. So he called, and I happened to answer the phone, and I was the one that sold it to him basically over the phone. And he's like, yeah, I'm on my way to come and get it. Well, he never came. And so 2 days later, here comes, the cops busting in my ex-boyfriend's parents' house.
Jeez, through
his
the
parents
house.
had no clue we were living there at the time, and they basically knocked, and nobody got up to answer the door. It was like, they were knocking on the door and nobody heard it, and all of a sudden they slammed the door open, and everybody on the ground kind of thing, and hands in the air, and his parents were just like, what the hell is going on?
Well, the parents were there?
Like, I don't know. Yeah, well, it was their house. We lived there.
Jeez.
And so they, they're like, who's Catra? And I'm like, me. And they're like, where's Jason? And he was sleeping because he hadn't slept for like 4 days. And so they kind of realized, they were going on and on, like, questioning everybody. And they realized the parents had nothing to do or knew anything about what was going on. And they realized, after about 15, 20 minutes that this was not a huge bust that they were coming into. It was just a couple of young people, living at the guy's parents' house, and who had no clue, because they started searching and ransacking the whole house. And then they realized, once they went into the room to get Jason, he gave them all the drugs and everything. And, neither one of us denied anything. And so, and they just were looking for firearms and that through the house. And once they realized, these parents have no clue what's going on. And so they just took me and him off to jail. So they didn't have to search the entire house, because they realized that the guy Jeff lied and we were not the big wigs.
Did you actually get cuffed? Did they cuff you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. I was put in jail for selling drugs. That's a pretty big thing. So, and what ended up happening, so my ex-boyfriend took all the blame, even though I did the sell over the phone, and my attorney. So I spent one night in jail, and the cop, because we went separate cop cars, and the cop that took me in the vehicle, he goes, you've never been in trouble. He goes, what are you doing? What are you doing this for? This is, don't you know this drug is horrible? And, my ex-boyfriend had been arrested several times, and it's like he didn't have a job. I had a job, so the cop that arrested me really kind of set me straight. And then I was terrified. I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to jail. People are going to beat me up. Who knows what's going to happen to me in there? And he assured me that I would not, I would be in my own cell and all of this stuff. So, cause I was just crying, he knew I wasn't, that type of person. And, and I just got in a bad place. And so, so they took me to jail, and, I was in where they take you in, and it was like a big waiting room, like you're at the airport kind of thing. Yeah. With a bunch of different women in there. There was gang members. There was, just young people getting a DUI. There was older people getting a DUI. And then there was an older woman that was like 70 that had gotten in an argument with her husband, and she scratched him. So they took her into jail, Yeah. It's just like, wow, there's all these different people in here. So it was totally different than what I thought it was going to be. And so once I got in there, the cop had told me, he goes, you're not going to you're not going to be there. They'll let you out right away. And so once they were intaking me, I was starting to freak out because they made me put on this different outfit. And they're like, you're going into a cell. And I said, no, I'm supposed to leave. And they're like, no, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So I was so young and naive. And
what was it like when the cell door slammed shut? What was that like?
Well, so going through the whole intake, I was getting more scared. It's like they do the whole search. I mean, that is just degrading, having to go through all of that. And I kept thinking to myself, what am I doing here? Why am I here? What did I do? What in my life did make me be here right now? So going into the cell, I had my own room. And so, it's like they stuck me in there. And I remember looking, there's a mirror, but it's not really a mirror. It's just like a sheet, some kind of metal that you can see your image. Because they don't have glass there, because people would try to commit suicide and kill themselves or whatever. And so I looked at myself and I just told myself, looking into that piece of metal that was supposed to be like glass, like, how did I get here? Why am I here? And I just bawled and cried and thought I was there for life. And, they forgot about me. I'm not supposed to be here. So then they did let me go the next day, and somebody came to pick me up, and then I immediately started, going to court after that. And my attorney told me, he goes, your boyfriend's taking all the blame. He goes, but I don't, he goes, we might get lucky here. And he goes, because usually they're just as hard as on the female as they are with the male when they get both arrested for the same thing, for drug dealing, basically, is what it was. And since I had never been in trouble, they decided to give me what was called drug diversion. So I was in an outpatient program. So I didn't have to go into a facility. And I just had to basically, go to meetings, go to AA, go to NA, do urine tests every single day. And that's kind of what I went through, and started going to therapy, and that definitely helped me.
Yeah. So that from that moment, you just made I need to change my life decision. Was that sort of the turning point?
Well, I was forced to.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I knew there was times when I was doing speed where I was like, I can never quit this. This is my life. I'm always going to do this. I mean, there was a couple of times when my boyfriend wanted to quit doing speed, and I thought, what are you talking about? We can't quit. No quit. So I just, I came to the realization that was going to be my life. Yep. And so getting arrested certainly scared me straight and give me a wake-up call and forced me into getting to where I needed to be.
When did the running for you start to kick off? Was it post this incident, or were you like a runner during this time or before this time, or how did you sort of get into running early on?
So I always hated running. So I played sports growing up. My father was big into soccer, and my brother played soccer, and my father forced me to play soccer because I was very quiet growing up. I liked taking dance lessons and things like that, but they forced me into group sports. So my father was my coach on my soccer team, and I absolutely hated anything to do with running. If you made me running back and forth up and down a field, I hated it. I didn't like sweating. I didn't like, that feeling of running. It hurt, because you don't know pace or anything when you're young. You're just full on sprint. And so I didn't like running growing up, and I absolutely just despised it. So no, I was not a runner. Yeah. And I started when I got arrested, and then I was going through the outpatient program. I enrolled in a gym. So I decided to start lifting weights and doing that and walking. So I didn't get into running right away. I changed my whole lifestyle. I became a vegan as well. I was a vegetarian and then became a vegan, so no animal products at all. And I started just by walking. And 2 years into working out in the gym, I decided one day, this little 3-mile loop that I used to do with my dog, that I was going to try running it. And so 2 years later, without anything, I just decided one day I was going to run the 3 miles, and I ran it. And I felt so amazed that I was able to do it, because I would see people on the treadmill in the gym running, and I thought, oh, I want to run, but I don't want to run on that thing. I want to run outside if I'm going to do it. And so that was my big turning point. And And there was a flyer inside of a Barnes and Nobles, which is a bookstore. And this is back in the day, there was no internet kind of thing where you signed up for races.
Yeah.
But there was a flyer for a 10K, and that was in 2 weeks. And so from the time I did my first run, and 2 weeks later, I did a 10K race.
And then did it slowly sort of progress further and further? And then do you remember sort of getting into your first marathon at all?
Oh, yeah. So as soon as I finished my 10K, there was a flyer for the San Francisco Marathon on my vehicle. So I thought, I'm going to run a marathon. And I knew it was like 20-something miles. I didn't know the exact distance. So I felt so wonderful after running 10K that, I never ran past 3 miles, and I only did that a few times leading up, to 2 weeks later was when I did my 10K. So I talked to a friend of mine, Kevin, and I said, hey, how far is a marathon? And he said, it's 26 miles. And I said, well, I'm going to run the San Francisco Marathon. And the marathon was in 3 months. So I went to the bookstore and I looked in the running section, and I found a book on how to train for your first marathon. So I bought that book and I sat down to read it, and I thought, well, I got 3 months, so I got to skip through the chapter that said what you're supposed to be doing 3 months before the marathon, and you should be doing 9 miles as your long run. So back in the day, there was no GPS, and so I set my odometer in my car to figure out, because the next day was, I was going to have to do this 9-mile run because that was where I was supposed to be with my training. So I set the odometer, and I drove 4.5 miles, and happened to be, there was a gas station right there. And I thought, that's perfect. That's my turnaround point. And then I run home. So the next day I got up and got ready and put on my shoes and ran to my 4.5 miles, turned around and came back and felt like I conquered the world.
Yep.
Being able to run 9 miles, going from nothing to, doing one 10K. And then a week, 2 weeks later doing a 9-miler, and it just progressed from there. And I had 3 months to train for it, and that's how it started.
And then the rest is history. It just sort of snowballed from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
And how long after that point did it take for you to go beyond the marathon distance?
So it would have been the next day had I met somebody that did ultras. Yeah. So I ran 2 marathons that year, and because it was in, let's see, the race was in July, and then my next marathon was in December. And then so after I did my second marathon, which was Honolulu Marathon, I decided, I was going to run every marathon in California. I was going to figure out a way to do all these marathons. So I started running all these different marathons in California, and some of them happened to be trail marathons. So that's where I learned of this ultra running business, because I would be running with people at different various trail marathons, and I'd hear them say that word, ultra. They were doing an ultra, and I was like, what is that? And so, I had met a guy that I was running a marathon with, and he was saying, oh yeah, he ran, an ultra marathon once. He ran a 50K. And so I said, well, how far is that? And he said 31 miles. And I was like, well, that's, only 6 more miles. I can do this. I got this. So I realized, this is my second year of running marathons that I'm going to sign up and run an ultra. So 2 years into it, and I was already, mind you, some of my marathons were back to back. So little did I know I was already training to do an ultra, because I was doing a marathon on a Saturday and a marathon on a Sunday. So what better preparation, right? Yeah. To be able to do a 50K, that should be a piece of cake. So the 50K that I signed up for, and this is in 98, it happened to be like 105 degrees that day. So, it was really hot, and, I was up and down in the mountains. And coming from a marathoning background, even though I was doing trail marathon, I didn't know you were supposed to walk, because when you run marathons, you just run. Yeah. And there's no walking, you're going to run the hills no matter what. So early on, when I was speeding past people and they were all walking, I thought, why is everybody walking? And a man shouted out to me, he goes, is this your first 50K? And I said, yeah. And he goes, oh, we'll see you later. I thought, what is he talking about? And I thought, and I ran a good chunk of it until like mile 20, and then everything just fell apart. I was, I didn't know about nutrition. I didn't know about drinking correctly, and it was hot. And I was, reduced to like a shuffle. And then the guy comes by and he goes, "I told you should have been walking."
Yeah.
So I finished that, and I just thought that was so amazing. Oh my God, I got to, do another race. So I signed up for a 50 miler, because then at this point I'm believing like you're not really an ultramarathoner until you actually run 100 miler. And I remember like I must have been 10 or 12, and my father was watching Western States 100 miler on this sports channel, and he goes, "Sit down here." And I go, I remember this distinctly because he's like, "These people are running from Squaw Valley all the way to Auburn, 100 miles through the mountains." And I thought, oh, that's where we go skiing. And so he was obsessed with watching that. And by the way, my father got into running in the later part of his life, and he ended up passing away at 49 from a massive heart attack, even though he was pretty fit, but he had come from a cigarette smoking background and not eating so healthy. And it was just something that happened to him because his parents lived well into their 90s. Yeah. So anyways, I remember that moment from way back when about this 100-mile thing. So as I am progressing now, doing my ultras, I'm thinking, oh, you're not, you're going to have to do that Western States race at some point, because that's what everybody does, once I started learning about ultras. And so I did a 50 miler, and I did another 50K. And so I finished the 50 miler, and I just thought, wow, and my mom was just like, "Wow, my God, you're crazy." So then I thought, I'm going to do another 50 miler. So I did another 50 miler, and this is all within like less than a 4-month period. And this is all within 2-3 months of running my first 50K. So the second 50 miler I did, it was pouring rain, bad storm. And in the middle of this thing, I thought, oh my God, if I get through this, I'm signing up for a 100 miler. And so I got through it, and a lot of the people dropped down to the 50K option. Yep. And I finished last, but I finished, and I thought, when is the next 100 miler? So within 4 months, less than 4 months of running my first ultra, I ran a 100 miler.
Yeah. And
because I didn't know any better.
Yeah. And
it was.
So, and how was that feeling, conquering the 100-mile distance for the first time? G'day guys, Matt here. This podcast is a labour of love, and all episodes are researched, scheduled, edited, created and promoted in my spare time. Typically, after an episode has been recorded, it can take another 3 hours of post-production activities to get the final cut. If I'm providing you with value and you wish to support my vision of sharing these inspirational stories to the world, you can do so at borntokickarse.com and click on the Patreon banner. Your support will help to maintain the monthly podcast running costs and enable me to outsource repetitive tasks so I can bring you even more kick-ass episodes. Once again, if you want to support me in producing this podcast, head over to borntokickarse.com and click on the Patreon banner. You can't miss it. And now back to the rest of the show. So, and how was that feeling, conquering the 100-mile distance for the first time?
Oh God, that. So like I said, there was no internet really back then. There was no information. Like we have so much information. I mean, it's so different for everybody now. I mean, I started doing ultras in 98, so it was totally different. And running your first 100 miler, there was no, there's books out now, there's internet sites, there's like training programs. There's very, very little information back then about how to do it, other than there was an ultra running magazine that's been around forever. And that was where you read about these races. And so I had no clue. I just knew I should change my shoes and socks, and, I need to eat and, drink. And that was kind of it. I mean, I didn't really have any information, and I didn't know anybody that ran. I ran on my own. I didn't know anybody that was an ultra runner or even a runner. So I was learning all of this by myself. Yep. So I got to my 100-mile race not knowing really anything. And like mile 60, I had no clue my feet were going to swell. So I had the same road shoes that I wore, but I was changing my socks every 20 miles. But blisters. I had never experienced that. It was like, chafing, being delusional. It was, yeah. So when I finished, I was on sub 24 to finish, and I ended up finishing in, I think, 26 and a half hours, but I could hardly walk. Once I was done, my feet were blistered so bad. Yeah. And after I finished and I took a bath and was getting ready to head to the airport with my boyfriend at the time, I asked him, I said, "Where's my ultra running magazine?" I was kind of crawling around on the ground because I couldn't really walk yet. I couldn't stand up. My feet were so badly blistered. I mean, really bad. And he goes, "Why do you want that?" And I said, "I want to find out and see when the next 100-miler is, because I'm not sure if I like this. I want to do it again." Yeah. So yeah, I was pretty well. I got right into it.
Yeah. Now, it's
just my personality, I guess.
Well, just on that, have you ever sort of delved into or really sort of thought about addiction? You've got an addictive personality, with early days, experimenting with drugs and sort of getting into that scene. And then today, or the last sort of 20 years, not just running, but extreme ultramarathons. And, you've done over 120 100-milers and 260 or more ultramarathons. So there is an addictive or an addiction theme there. Have you sort of thought about that at all in terms of that aspect of your personality? Do you sort of find...
Sure. I think I have an addictive personality. Yeah. I have a lot of tattoos, a lot of piercings. When I do things, I really do things. I really get passionate about things and just really get into it. But I mean, to me, it's a healthier addiction from where I was. If you look at it that way, I mean, some people think it doesn't matter. It's, an addiction, but I'd rather be running every day and doing what I love and being in the wilderness than being that strung out drug addict person that I was before, and in the throes of being just not a good person. I was a bad person. I was abusing my body and, selling drugs to people and doing such bad stuff back then that, it's not a bad thing. It's, keeping me alive, and it's showing me adventure, and it made me become this totally different person that I would have ever thought I would have been. I mean, I hated being outside. I hated dirt. I hated, anything to do with being outside and getting dirty. Yep. And now it's just like I live for each day to just get out, put my shoes on, and go on an adventure. I'm afraid I'm going to miss something if I didn't go out to see what's out there, and I meet so many fantastic people on the trail every day. There's other hikers that are out, and, other runners, and just different people that you just, they see you time and again, and they're out there doing the same thing. And it's, it's good for you. It's not, it's not where it's taking over my life where I can't function. Yeah. I mean, if I couldn't run tomorrow, for some odd reason, I'm not going to, commit suicide over it.
Yeah. Do you ever sort of doubt yourself in terms of, you're about to enter into another race, another 100-miler or beyond? Do you ever sort of think before you hit submit, I'm going to, here's my payment, you're in? Do you ever sort of think, I don't know whether I can do this? Is there ever that doubt in your mind before you commit to a particular race? Do you ever sort of get that feeling or not?
Nope, never. Because it's a part of running is it's a mental thing. So you have to believe in yourself. I mean, some people may have that feeling, that there's doubt or whatever, but I believe I can do anything I want to. Anything I put my mind to, I can do it. It's like I don't put up a block like that. It's just I go into it confident. Sure, I have ups and downs in a race when you're out in the middle of a 100-mile race and you're feeling like shit and you're like, maybe a mountain lion will attack me and I'll have to stop. Or maybe something will happen and I have to quit right now, because I don't want to quit. Yeah. But something has to happen for me to quit. Maybe I'll have to help another runner that's injured and I'll have to stop going. Yeah. But no, it always switches around, and it's just part of the game in your head when you're running these things. It's like that mental game. But I always think back to where I was that moment when I got arrested, and I think, you know what? There's no complaining when you're out doing 100 miles. We're paying to do these races. Yep. And so there's many people that would change places with us. And I always try to remember the fact that there's people suffering. They may have cancer. They may have something happen to them where they can't run ever again. And those are the people that I do it for. I just keep those people in my mind and say, you know what, I'm doing it because they're following me and I got to inspire them and I can't let them down. I want to inspire those people to let them know, don't quit. Just try to do whatever you can, whether it be anything in life. It doesn't have to be running, just keep moving forward and show people, I'm doing this as long as I can. I know one day, I may not be able to go this far or do this, like I am now, but right now is not that time. So I'm just going to do it as long as I can.
Over the years, you mentioned you sort of made a switch from being a vegetarian and then getting into a vegan lifestyle. How has your nutrition, over the last sort of 20 years through to today, your approach to clean eating, how has that benefited your running and your recovery? Do you think that's played a big part in being able to complete all these runs?
Well, I've been a vegan since before I was ever a runner. So then, it wasn't like I switched when I was already running. So I've been a vegan for 22 years and I was a vegetarian before then. And so just eating a clean diet, it definitely helps me. I mean, I don't switch anything. Like you hear these people carbo loading for stuff. I mostly eat just raw, and I go back and forth, during the week. I try to do mainly more fruit-based diet. And then on the weekends, I'll have more vegetables and, I'll use like nut butter packets, like almond butter to get more calories when I'm doing a race. And I eat a lot of baby food, the little squeezy packet of baby food. And I just eat tons of fruit at the aid station. I don't do anything bizarre or, different than what I normally do anyways. So, but I definitely, when I'm, if I'm feeling like I need more salt, I'll take a potato at the aid station and dip it in salt and just pretty much, like I said, it's just fruits or vegetables is all I'm eating out there. I don't eat, any junk. I mean, very, very rarely will I even have potato chips or something like that. But it's if I'm craving that, then I'm going to have it. So, but my diet is really clean. So I think I'm getting everything I need, in terms of what I want out there. And I eat a lot of dates when I'm racing. So those are really, really nutritious. And what I do for hydration, I mean, I drink water, but watermelon juice is one of my favorite things. So we here in the States, I don't know if you guys have it in Australia, but there's companies that make fresh watermelon juice. So I take those bottles and I freeze them in the freezer the day before the 100. And usually you have to put your drop bag supplies out the morning of the 100. So they're already frozen. So I know by the time I'm going to get to them in a race that they're going to defrost and then I'm going to be able to drink it. So I love watermelon juice. If I could have somebody blending up fresh watermelon juice for me at an aid station, I would love that.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
So I do that. And, it's
freezing it.
With any beverage that you like, freeze it the night before the 100 and just put it in your drop bags. And, if it's especially a long race, like 100, where you're going to put your stuff at. So you're like, okay, I'm not going to need that. It's going to be out there for 2 days. And when it's something fresh, you definitely don't want to leave it sitting in a drop bag where it's warm and when it's supposed to be refrigerated. Having it frozen and then defrosting when you get to it is great. Yeah, it's worked for me for a long time.
Like outside,
and I do coconut water as well.
Yeah, I love coconut water.
What's that?
I love coconut water.
Yeah,
but just outside of running, like your normal day to day, do you, you mentioned you eat a lot of raw food. Do you get into smoothies at all? As in just blitzed up fruit?
Yeah.
Yep.
I have a Vitamix.
Yeah. I've got one of them. They're good.
That's like my favorite thing. I have, superfood green powder that I put in there with tons of vegetables, a couple of dates. I do use almond milk. So I use almond milk in my smoothie or, just juice. But yes, I have smoothies every day. That's like my main meal. I'm not a big breakfast person, so I don't eat in the morning before I head off for a run. So if I'm just, if it's a long run, then I'll start doing like an almond butter packet or something, a couple of hours into it or 3 hours into it. But I don't really eat a lot early on. But in the morning after my run, I come home and I make a smoothie, and that's my big thing. With the green superfoods powders and all of that. And I'll use protein powder by Garden of Life, they make a raw protein. So I use that in my smoothies as well after I do a run, just so that way you're getting more protein so your body can recover more.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard dates are actually quite calorie dense. You know, if you're particularly
they are.
for
3 dates have like 130 calories.
Yeah.
I learned about dates when I was in Morocco running Marathon des Sables.
All right.
And the Moroccans that's what they had. Because I thought, how are these guys having such small packs running through the Sahara Desert? How did they get by doing this when you have to carry required gear and required amount of calories per food? And well, dates have a lot of calories.
Yeah.
So that's how they got away with it. They were just carrying big, huge bags of dates.
And how was that run, the Marathon des Sables?
Oh, that was fun. So I did it back in 2003. I ran it.
Yep.
So I'd love to run it again, you know, and now I'm wiser and, you know, I'm more, you know, I've been fast packing for a long time now. So it's that type of race, you know. So it was quite the experience. You know, I had a good time. I didn't really train for it, but I am doing a stage race here in the United States this year in Arizona. So that should be fun. So it's a 6-day stage race, 150 miles. And what is really nice about that, like Marathon des Sables, you have to carry all of your gear. But this race, you just carry your hydration pack, and they move all your stuff for you each day. So you don't have to carry like all of your tent and things all of your sleeping bag and all of that. You don't.
Yeah.
So that'll be pretty exciting. And that's in June. I'm doing that.
Now, I remember reading somewhere that you ran 100-miler and then halfway through the race you did some rock climbing during a race. What sort of happened there?
Yeah. So I was married to a rock climber once upon a time. So this is when I wasn't married to him at the time, but I had met him and we kind of started dating. And I said, I have this project I want to do. I said, I want to run 100 miles in Yosemite and I want to do a rock climb in the middle of this. So I had just started climbing then. See, when I get into things, I get really into it. So I started rock climbing, and within 3 months, I climbed almost every classic rock climb in Yosemite Valley. So he said, all right, I'll help you on this. So at mile 56, I climbed a 7-pitch rock climb called Nutcracker and finished that, and then headed down and finished the rest of my run all through Yosemite.
That would have been good.
So that was pretty exciting. Yeah, that was really cool to be able to do that. And I felt totally fine after running all night and getting onto this climb at like 9:00 in the morning, and I totally killed it. Yeah. It was awesome.
And just on the climbing thing, did you break your arm one time? Was it trying to climb El Capitan?
Yes.
What happened there?
El Capitan, yes. My very first one and only big wall climb. So my ex-husband is a speed climber, and he's got numerous speed climbing routes where he does, routes on El Capitan that take people like 6 days. He can do it in 15, 20 hours, whatever. Yeah. So he decided a friend of his wanted to go up. So I decided, I want to do this. I want to climb El Cap. So he's like, yeah, you could do it. So we were climbing and a big, huge storm came in. So we were going to have to rappel off. And rappelling is one of the most dangerous things to do when you're climbing, especially when you're up high like that. So we were rappelling down, and the gree that I was using, the belay device that I was using to rappel on, it fell, and my arm got stuck in the rope, and the rope broke my arm. Did it? Jeez. And that was pretty scary because I thought I was going to die.
Yeah. What part of your arm was broken?
My ulna, it's the small little bone.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So it wasn't a compound fracture, thank God, but it was a very painful thing, and I had to have surgery and have a plate and 7 screws in there.
All right. Does that go off like if you're going through airports, the buzzer?
No, it doesn't actually.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
I always thought that it would, and I think you have to have bigger metal pieces. Yeah. I think that's more like titanium, and it's very small. Yeah. My piercings don't go off when I go through a metal detector either.
Yeah. So how many piercings do you have?
26 total.
Yep. Do they hurt? What hurts more, that piercings or tats?
Oh, well, a piercing is over quickly. A tattoo is, it's one of those things where it's just like scraping over and over again. It all depends on your adrenaline in your body. And, the longest I ever got tattooed for was 8 hours, and the tattoo artist said he would never do that again because that was like too much for his arm to be doing. He kept having to take breaks.
Yeah.
So it was the stars. I have 7 stars on each leg going up and down, and he wanted just to do one leg. And I said, no, you got to do this all at once. I'm not going to, have to take a break and not run for a few days and all that healing. I go, this needs to be done all at once.
Yeah.
So he tattooed me for 8 hours, and that was a rough, that's a lot. Most people can handle about 3 hours, but I've gotten tattooed for up to 5 hours many times.
Yeah.
So
and how many?
It definitely hurts. You just have to. My arms are sleeved now, so I don't count them individually because they're all like meshing into one.
Yeah.
So definitely over 50 different things on me. So an ongoing still project.
Yeah. Is there one that you've got that you love more than all the others? Is there one that's your favourite? Do you have one?
I like them all. They're all for different reasons. Yeah. The 2 skulls, sugar skulls that are on my thighs, I really, really love those. One is more gothic looking, and that was what they resemble. Or one is supposed to be my past, and one is my future, because the other one's all colorful and rainbowy-ish looking rainbows and stuff. Yeah. So, but my next tattoo is going to be a portrait of Truman on my leg.
All right. Yeah,
and that'll probably be my favorite one.
Yeah.
And those little pops I will have tattooed on me too.
Now, just on your outfits, you've got some incredibly crazy and outrageous and colourful outfits. Tell us about your outfits. Like, if people haven't seen you, your Instagram page or on Facebook, you wear some really crazy outfits, on your runs and during different races and stuff. Tell us about your approach. Do you just try and just go as loud as possible with what you're wearing?
I just, it all depends on the race. I go, what do I want to put together here? So I'm sponsored by a company called Running Skirts, and they make all the skirts. And then the different leg sleeves, arm sleeves that I use are by another company that I'm sponsored by. So they make these clothes. People could put them together the way I do, but they probably don't go as loud as I do most people. So I've always been creative, and actually some of the people that are my sponsors started designing more different, crazier things because of me, because, the colors. But the reason I wear so much colorful things is because in the past I was so dark. I was all black and white, and I just feel like, wearing color and being bright and cheerful, it makes people smile, puts a smile on their face. I mean, I have had so many people in a 100-mile race going, you know what, I just love to see you. I know when I'm going to see you that you're just going to make me smile because you're just so bright and positive looking. So it just makes me feel good. It makes me feel more positive when I have something really cute on in a race and I'm feeling crappy. At least I know I look good. So it makes me feel good that I look good.
Yeah.
And I just like being colorful. I just love being fun because that's just how I am anyways. That's my daily wardrobe is like stylish and hip and fun. And so I just transfer it into my running apparel. That's just how I am. I just, people see me that don't know I'm a runner. Like when I'm going into a Starbucks or something, they comment all the time, "Oh my God, I love your outfit." And they don't even realize that I'm in a running outfit. Yep. I go, "Oh yeah, off for a run." And they're like, "And that?" And I'm like, "This is a running outfit." Yeah. Like I saw a woman today, I went to take Truman to the pet store, and this lady said, "Thank you, just thank you." And I thought, what is she talking about? And I go, "I'm sorry, what?" And she goes, "No, I just want to say thank you." And I go, "For what?" And she goes, "Just because of how you look." She goes, "You just made my day." She goes, "You're just so bright and so happy." And she goes, "Everything about you just made my day." She goes, "I just want to thank you for you being yourself and an individual." And I was like, "Thank you. Wow." It's like, making somebody a complete stranger. She knows nothing about who I am. I'm just with my dog going to take him to the pet store. And she just, was happy that she saw me. And people tell me often, they come into where I work and they're just like, "I just love to come in to see what you're wearing and just to see you because you always look so cool." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you." So I know it touches people, and maybe it'll make somebody come out of their, comfort zone and wear a little more splash of color,
Yeah, one of the things that I notice about you or detect about you, from other interviews that I've listened to and seen you on online, you've got a real infectious, positive outlook on life. Where do you think that comes from? Do you think that's you're born with that, or something? It's just, is it a habit to see the glass as half full all the time rather than sort of half empty? Where does your positive mindset and outlook come from?
Well, I wasn't born with that. I had a positive attitude, especially for a long time. I was in such a negative area and space in my life. We take things for granted, and it's like tomorrow could be over, so I go into each day just, trying to be as positive as I can, because we're not here very long. We're just like a little blip on the radar, and it's like we could sit around and dwell on things, or, take things too personally, like about who deleted who off of Facebook or some crap that's so it's minute. It doesn't have a bearing on anything. It's like, why get caught up in so much stuff? And I used to be big into drama when I was on drugs and all of that, and just like dwell on everything and hold everything in. But, it's like I learned, we're not here very long. And my mom passed away in 2002. And when she passed away, I realized, what, I got to live for her. I got to live, keep going and keep being as positive as I can, because she was a very positive person too. And I just, I just don't like negativity. And it's like, I know when that starts creeping in, I just try to change it, because it definitely, I can influence people to maybe think outside the box and try to be a little happier, because we're not here very long. So we got to make the best of it. It's like, just be the best you can be each day, and just wake up. I wake up every day and I'm grateful that I'm alive. I made it through, it's like I woke up, so I got to just live this day again and just have enjoy everything I can.
Yep.
I mean, of course, there's always going to be bad patches. We have bad patches, but it's like, just get through that, talk it out, go out. I run on the trail, and I if something's bothering me, I try to work it out, and I don't want to, affect anybody else around me with negativity. It's like, just got to inspire people, because there's other people having worse things happening. People are dying of horrible illnesses and, just horrible things happening in the world. And it's like, you just got to be positive and try to, live each day, until one day when we're not alive again, it'll be over. So I got to be as positive as I can for now.
Yeah. With your birthdays, you have a unique approach to celebrating your birthday every year. How do you sort of celebrate your birthdays? Can you talk about that?
Yes. So this all started when I turned 40, and I thought, I want to do something epic. So I'm going to run hours for age. Instead of going out and doing a 40K or 40 miler, I said, I'm going to run 40 hours. So it started when I was 40, and I said I would never do that again. And then I did it when I was 41. And then I said, okay, I'm not going to do that again. And then, I kept going. And then finally, when I hit 45, I said, okay, I'm going to do it until I'm 50. And then that's it. That's the end of this. 50 hours, it's going to be over. So here I am. I turned 52 in December, and I went for 52 hours.
Oh, did you?
Already planning on doing 53 hours.
So how far do you go?
It all depends. So this year I did 148 miles, and, it's looped, I live right across the street from the trail, and I used to live like a mile away from the trail. And now I've learned to appreciate, like, if the weather's going to be really epic and bad, I can run loops in my neighborhood. Like this year it was raining. So I started on Thursday, and my partner was going to run with me at night, and he works from home. So at 4:30 in the morning, he was going to have conference calls and stuff. And I realized the weather was so bad that I was not going to go up into the wilderness at that point, because I was watching the weather, and how bad it was going to be, and like when it was going to get better. So I had been out in the wilderness all day, and then I came home and I said, I'm just going to run around the neighborhood, 13 miles here and there. And it's pretty safe where I live. And so he went and he was going to take a nap. And then I realized, this weather is so bad. I'm not even going to wake him up. I'm not going to wake him up to run around the neighborhood with me. It's like, you might as well sleep and come out the following night when everybody else was going to come, when the weather was going to get better. So I, started shortening it up and did like 3 to 5 miles, because I would have to come in and change. It was pouring I think it poured on me until about 2:30 in the morning. I mean, complete just downpour. So I would just run little loops, come home, change, run again, loops, so yeah. you just do whatever you want. You know, it's like I couldn't continuously be out there because of the weather, and it was freezing cold. So at about 4:30 in the morning, then the weather started lightening up, and I took Truman back out, and he paced me for some hours. And, you know, so I just have everybody, you know, this year they were all at my house. So we have a big house. So it was like staging from here. So people would come and run and then go to sleep, and then somebody else would come and run, and then the other one would go to sleep. And then we all kind of in the morning, everybody came out for like the last 7 or 8 hours. We ran to Sunol. And so we did it as a group. And in the wilderness over here, you know, you're not supposed to be out there past 10 o'clock on the trail, you know, because they don't have anybody to monitor if something happens. But I always let the East Bay Regional Parks police know, and they all know me. And so the rangers and all that, they know I'm out there. So I'm okay. I don't get in trouble for being out there. So I parked my car like 11 miles away through the wilderness over the mountains. And so that was one of the aid stations. We can use that and go back and forth and do things. So,
do you think
so
you'll
continue
continue on that?
One big party.
Do you think you'll continue doing, do you think you'll continue doing the birthday runs?
Well, people look forward to it.
Yep.
So now I have to do it for everybody else. Yep. So yes. And, you know, it's like, might as well, you know, until I can't do it anymore. Yep. Why, you know, whatever. There's 72-hour races around that time of year, so I can show up to one of those and use it as my birthday run if I want to. I would say that across the years is around my birthday time, because I can't officially do it on my birthday. My birthday is Christmas Eve. Yeah. So most people aren't going to come around. So I always do it like a week before Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah. Now tell us about your book.
And it's just to inspire other people.
Yeah. So you're writing a book?
I am. So this has been something that I've always wanted to do. So I'm working with a writer, because obviously I don't ever sit down to write. So how we're writing it is I'm recording my stories. So we already had our proposal done for, you know, exactly what the book is going to be about from chapter to chapter. So my publishing company, you know, we proposed that, and that's what they agreed to. So we have to write it in that fashion. So I just go through each chapter, and I basically am writing it by talking in my phone on memo and sending it to my writer, and then we work together. So I'm telling my story, but he's writing it for me. So I'm working with a writer.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, it's been really fun. Yeah. So, and I met him like a year and a half ago, and they were going to have a different writer. I was going to hire a different writer, but I just really like his style of writing. So he writes exactly kind of like how I talk. I'm all over the board, and he helps reeling me in. And, you know, we're going gangbusters into this. So we have until October 1st as our due date of having everything in order. And then, you know, if we need to make any changes, we make changes. But hopefully it'll be out at the beginning of next year.
All right. Yeah, cool. Have you decided on the name of the book, or is that sort of under wraps?
We haven't. We don't have a title yet. Yeah, we don't have a title yet. So, but I have some names, but I'm going to keep them to myself because I don't want anybody to steal my name for their books. Yeah. So, it'll be all about pretty much my life and how I got into running, and, you know, just many different adventures that I've been on and all the different epic things I've done in my life.
Yeah. With all the running that you've done, you know, the tens of thousands of miles or hundreds of thousands of miles and countless hours out on the trail, do you get into the flow state much or easy? Do you sort of find yourself getting into that zone?
Oh, all the time. I forget, like I'm just zoning out, and I'm like, how did I get up on this peak? Yep. Because I'm thinking of everything else and I don't even feel the effort. I've done that many times where I'm like, how did I get right here? Yeah. I'm just like thinking about everything and nothing all at once, and then there I am there. Yes, I get in that state many, many times.
Yeah. So do you think there's a limit to the human spirit? Like with all these incredible runs that you've done, like over 260 odd marathons, ultramarathons, do you think there's a limit to the human spirit in terms of continuing to go beyond and continuing to discover yourself and, you know, on that continual learning path about yourself and about life? Do you think there's a limit to that?
I don't think there's any limits. There's no limits in life. You can do whatever you want to do. It's just, you know, when people start talking about having a limit, then that's when they stop doing and going above and beyond. I love being challenged. So I'll never have a limit because I always want to be challenged at doing something different and bigger, and I just do it for me. It's, I just enjoy being out in the mountains. People are like, why do you run every day? I go, I love being out in nature. If I lived where I had to run around the road every day, I don't know if I would like that as much. I mean, I'm going to have to start doing a lot of road training because I'm going to be doing Badwater 135 this summer. So, I got to start buckling down on the road, which is a challenge for me. Yeah. So if people ask you, well, what's your challenge? And I'm like, running on the road is a challenge for me because it's just like one direction. Yeah. That's it. But when you're, I've been out to Badwater and I've crewed there several times and crew chief. And so you just see so much beauty around you. So you just have to learn to just like enjoy everything that's around you instead of focusing on that one straight line, the white line, following it to the Whitney portal.
So is that in July? Around
yes, it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you?
And I'm doing what's called
Sorry? Yeah.
What's that?
No, you keep going.
Oh, so I'm doing what's called the Badwater Ultra Cup. So it's 3 different races that they put on. The first one's coming up. It's a 50-miler called Badwater Cape Fear, and that's in North Carolina. And then the second one it's a team race where you run with another teammate, 81 miles, and you have to stay together. And it starts in the Saltonstee and finishes at Palomar Mountain in San Diego County. And I've run that team one a couple of times. And then finishing the Ultra Cup is Badwater 135.
Yeah.
So,
how are you going to approach your training with respect to the heat? The heat is the big thing, or one of the main things with the Badwater 135. Are you sort of doing anything in particular to train and prepare your body and in regards to the heat training or getting used to the heat? Is there anything in particular you're doing for that?
So I actually I like the heat better than I like the cold. And I have been crewing at Badwater 6 times. In the last 3 years, I've been there every single year as well. And I've been the crew chief. And so although I haven't run the 135 miles through there, I've paced a good portion of it. So I'd like to get out there and maybe do a couple more training runs. And I have a friend in Las Vegas that's also running it. And so she, so I'll just find different places to run where it's really hot and just train out in that and just get as much heat time in. I was thinking of renting a treadmill and putting it in one of because I don't own a treadmill, but I would want to rent one. There's places you can rent them, and just enclosing the whole room with plastic and putting in like kind of heaters and just do some treadmill training in there just to acclimate for the heat. And I'll definitely go into the gym and just hang out in the sauna to get that heat, but you can't, just by doing all these things, the Death Valley heat is totally different. It's like if you hold a blow dryer in your face, that's how it feels. Yeah. It's intense. But if you're, if you just think positive, like I try to, when I'm out there, it won't feel as hot. Yeah. I'm hoping. So, but your crew is the most important part of that race. And being a crew chief the last few years, I know exactly, I have been there enough times to know exactly what to do. Now I will expect them to do that for me. But I think because I'm so in control of having been a crew chief, it's going to be hard for my crew chief to be my crew chief because I'm going to be wanting to control everything. Yeah. But they're going to have to be in control. But, it's just I've learned so much just being out there. So I know what I need to do. And I'm really excited. Yep. Everybody has assumed I have run that race many times, which is really funny. Even the race director, Chris, when he was announcing the names, he was just like, when he announced my names, he was like, everybody assumes this next person who I'm going to announce has run this race many times, but this is their first time. Yeah. So people just assume I run it.
Just for listeners, some people may not be aware of the Badwater 135, and it's one of the toughest, or they sort of say it's the toughest ultramarathon on earth. And it's in the middle of summer. And where does it start? It starts in Death Valley.
In Death Valley, the lowest point, and you go to the highest point, and it's actually they have the highest temperature ever recorded on record there. in the United States.
Yeah, that's incredible. How sort of hot does it get?
Well, so the temperature could be like 120 something, but you got to factor in that the heat that's rising from the asphalt will make it feel a lot hotter. So I'm not sure exactly, how hot they say it is, but you feel like you're on fire because it's very hot. So, that's why it's so important you keep ice around your neck, ice under your hat. It's just, and that's why you have your crew. Every 2 miles, you have somebody there giving you a fresh bottle of cold beverage, and making sure it's most important that, your crew is taking care of you. So
have you thought about what outfit you're going to wear?
I'm excited.
Do you think you'll go like a mainly white
everybody's
outfit?
going to be wearing, no. Colorful. Yep. Yeah. Every year that I've even crewed it, I've been the crew. When I've been the crew chief, I pick out the outfits for everybody to wear, including my runner. He wore a skirt the last 2 years when I was his crew chief. So I'm not sure my sponsor is coming out with new designs. So I'll have to see what their new designs are and outfit my whole entire crew wearing the same matching outfits with me. And I'll have guys on my crew, so the guys have to wear the skirts too.
All right. In your running career, is there a moment that sort of sticks out in your mind as being your proudest moment in all the runs that you've done?
Yes. So I always tell people the most proudest moment for me was doing an out and back on the John Muir Trail. The John Muir Trail goes from Yosemite to the top of Mount Whitney, which is the highest point in the continental United States. And I turned around when I got to the top and I went back. So I did what's called a yo-yo, or an out and back. So 424 miles I did in 12 days, 4 hours and 58 minutes. And, it was me, my backpack, with all my food and my gear that I needed. And it was the hardest thing I ever did, but the most satisfying thing I ever did. It made me realize I could do anything when I did that. And so that record actually still stands. Nobody has ever attempted to break that record as far as I know.
Yeah. Geez, that would have been good. I've heard of the John Muir Trail.
People go one way and they're like, I don't want to turn. I don't know how you turned around and went back.
So does that actually?
I had to get back to my car.
Does that actually go to Mount Whitney, the top of Mount Whitney, the John Muir Trail?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing, I don't know the geography of that part of the world, but with Badwater, that goes to Mount Whitney as well. Does the John Muir Trail sort of go down the other side of the mountain type thing, or?
Yeah, well, so with Badwater, it doesn't go to the top of Mount Whitney. It goes to what's called the Whitney Portals. Yep. So, and back in the day, and that's at like just around 9,000 feet, but like the first guy that did it out, he went all the way to the top of Mount Whitney. And there used to be run where you went to the top of Mount Whitney, but because you need permits and all this and that, they stopped allowing that back in the, early 90s, yep. I think it was, or maybe late 80s. The park said, no, you can't be doing this. That's too dangerous. Yep. So I may end up going to the top of Mount Whitney after I finish Badwater, depending on how I feel. I applied for a permit, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I might do the original 146.
Just on success, how do you define success in life?
Being the best person you can be, being a positive person, being a good role model, and just living a clean life and an honest life.
Yeah. And just on advice, if you could pick up a phone right now and call a 20-year-old Catra Corbett and give her some advice, what would you tell her?
Life isn't always going to be easy, but you don't need to use drugs or alcohol to mask your problems and get through things. Be positive and just get through each day and know that your life can get better. And believe in yourself. That's most important.
Yeah. Now, if you could give some advice to someone who's addicted to drugs or, right in the drug scene and wants to clean up or change their direction, what sort of tips would you give someone who's sort of in that particular situation?
I would definitely refer them to get into a therapy program to help them get off on drugs. Start eating a clean diet and exercise. and know that their life will get better, that they don't have to live how they're living now, because it's not a good life to live. I mean, you get nowhere in life just having to get that next fix each day. I mean, there's nothing good that can happen in your life when you're living that kind of existence. So just know that, you know, you don't have to be like that, and there is a way out, and you can get help, and you can become a better person.
Yeah. And whereabouts can people find you online and, you know, see all your photos of your crazy outfits and stuff like that, and follow your progress, you know, towards Badwater and beyond? Whereabouts can people reach out and say hi?
I'm on Facebook, so I have an athlete page, Catra Corbett, on Facebook, and I also Instagram, Dirt Diva 333, and on Twitter, Dirt Diva 33. And I do have a blog, but I'm going to have to. I mean, I've had that blog forever, and I can hardly get into it because of Yahoo. I don't know my account, and all these problems happened a while back. So I'm going to make a new, a new blog page. So I'll definitely put that up and post it. But I am on trailgirl.blogspot.com. So if I could figure out how to post on there, I will again. But I couldn't get in the last time I was trying to post on Blogger, so I don't know what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll put links.
But yeah, I'm all over social media. They can just Google me.
Yep. Yeah, cool.
If they put in Dirt Diva or Catra, they're going to find all kinds of stuff about me.
Yeah, well, thanks again for coming on. And do you think you'll do any 100-mile training runs leading up to Badwater? Or big trail?
Oh, yeah, I have. Well, I think I have 4 or 5 100-mile races coming up before Badwater, and a 100-mile race, and then the 7-day stage races before Badwater as well.
Yeah, well, good luck.
I have a lot going on before you even get to Badwater.
Yeah. Well, good luck, and good luck with Truman, and continue, making a difference. It's been great speaking with you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on.
You've just been listening to the Born to Kick Arse podcast at borntoKickArse.com. If you liked what you heard and want more, please subscribe on iTunes. Give a 5-star rating and a Kick Arse review. This really helps to boost our presence and continues to allow us to introduce you to the most fascinating people on the planet. Welcome aboard, and catch you next time.